What's going on, guys? It's Cal here from KR Sabers, and this is the launch of the Eco Hero. For those wondering what the Eco Hero represents by the term Eco, essentially we're looking into making hilts now that are fitting within a certain price point. That might involve making some changes to how you might see our previous runs. We're not going to make these limited runs, for example. We'll continue to produce them. They won't come in special presentation boxes because they're not limited, which adds to the cost saving. And there's some engineering approaches that we took in order to make them a bit more affordable and less time on the machines and less complications that could increase the costs. So as you guys will know, our previous 2016 Hero was a great success, and I'd always wanted to redo the Hero again, especially after how much fun it was to do that run. And myself and Francisco got back to the drawing board, and we came up with this new version, which we've just called the Eco Hero, since we're going to be selling that at a decent price point, and also it will be super simple to install. That was the main goal. One of the frustrating things about the previous Hero that we released was the chassis had to be sort of slid out from the bottom. It would catch wires in the control box, and there was no real way of installing it easily. As technology's improved over time, we've now got these removable pogo pins and things like that, different systems in place that would have worked a lot better back then. But I still wanted to have a Hero lightsaber that had a fully removable core that made installation so easy. Essentially, you can solder the chassis outside of the hilt and it would just plug straight in, and that's it. So I just want to run over the kit. The kit will come partially assembled. It will come like this with these optional accessories. You've got your tri-ring, you've got your clamp circuit card, which is the correct sort of blue colour that we've seen now after different references and prop discussion. It's got this blue solder mask. We've got these copper rails, which you'll have to glue onto the sides of your control box liner here, which has been anodized grey already, so that you don't have to paint it. The grenade section's also been anodized black, and the neck has been anodized gold with an antique gold sort of colour. That means you won't have to do any painting whatsoever on the hilt. It will come exactly as presented here. You've got a vented pommel. You've got these acrylic green and red arrows, which pop in to this area here. You've got two long M3 grub screws, which are for pressing on the buttons, which are mounted on the PCB that is included with the kit, the switch PCB. And you have the arrow plate, which you'll glue into place. You'll see on here we've got these channels, which is for glue. So when you put the glue in these channels and pop the arrow plate in place, you'll be able to put the glue there, and it will help reduce any glue excess or oozing of glue, and it helps to keep it in there as well, because you kind of want a channel for that glue to sit in and adhere to. You'll also notice that there's no screws. The screws heads have actually been machined in instead of actually being screws, so you don't have any chance of losing those screws, and they're set at the correct angle from some prop references that we've seen. You'll notice as well the neck is nice gold colour in like a satin finish as well. It's not like a polished gold colour, it's a satin gold colour. Same for the grip section. You'll see that it's satin rather than gloss black, which sort of replicates the paint, because I know that when you anodize sometimes you can get like a glossy finish, and that doesn't look like it's actually been painted, because after lots of research by great RPF members, they've deemed that the prop was painted, wasn't anodized in any way, and I doubt they were using anodizing back then, sort of 40 years ago. This is also satin finish anodized. So it's come out beautifully, very happy with it, and I'll run through some of the features and sort of what I did with regard to the install. The first thing that you want to be doing is probably assembling the control box. It's quite simple to do. Essentially, you've got these two holes here in the control box. You've got one, I'll just zoom in a bit. You've got one at the top and one at the bottom. The way that this system works is you'll drop the springs in like so. Drop one spring in there. Drop one spring in there. Like that. Then you've got these two threaded inserts which go in here like that, and you see they push up like that. Just pop this one in So you see they're nice and springy and nice and springy. Now these two grub screws are what press the switches on the chassis, and these are threaded, so you want to do the flat side down of the grub screw and start to screw that in like so. And you'll need a 1.5mm Allen key, which I might have here. Yep. And we just want to screw that in there. So you can see now that's all the way in there. You can get the second one, thread that in, and what we want to be doing is, after we've done that, we can unscrew the top half. The top half is removable, and we're going to take a look down the barrel to see when they protrude through. So right now the grub screw isn't protruding. I need to turn it a little bit more. I'll just zoom out a bit. I need to screw down a little bit more, and maybe a little bit more. And now I can see that that grub screw is protruding, because that's what's going to be pressing on the buttons. I'm just checking the bottom one. Yep, the bottom one's protruding quite nicely. Now this can all be dialed in when you've done your install, so you can set your button tactile feedback by adjusting those screws. You'll also notice there's a spring-loaded grub screw in the center, which you can access from underneath. So when you remove these two Phillips screws, you can access this grub screw with the spring-loaded ball, which is actually what keeps the clamp card at tension. So after you've glued the rails on, when you've glued these copper rails on, like so, so you've glued those on and you slide the clamp card over, that holds it in place, and that grub screw is what keeps the tension on the clamp card, so that when you're pressing down at both ends, it's pushing those actuators which press the switch PCB on the chassis. So it's a really nice system, one that took a long time to figure out, but that's how the control box works. And thankfully with that system you can have a fully removable chassis and perfect tactile feedback. I mean, here's one that I installed earlier, and you can just hear, and that's pressing the buttons inside the chassis, and he just twists and locks in place. The way that it twists and locks in place is, you'll see just down there, maybe you can see it, there is another grub screw which is spring loaded, which is hidden under the control box, and that guides a rail that's on the Eco chassis. So when you twist into place, it always lines up perfectly. Then there's also two holes, which you can see just in there, which the LEDs on the switch PCB shine up into the control box and light up the LEDs inside. And that's how we designed the fully removable chassis. So it was definitely an exciting thing. I'm going to take these out. I want to take these out quickly and put them back into their accessory bags, because I want to show you how you'll get the kit. Get the spring out, and I'll show you more about how the kit is constructed. So in one of your accessory bags, you'll have both the springs, you have both the grub screws, like so. You'll have your tri-ring. What I do when I put these on, I just expand them and then put it in one hole of the D-ring and then use a vise to clamp it down. I think many of you who have done installs now will understand how to attach a tri-ring. It's nice and simple. You've got your control box rails, which we'll glue on. The way that I glue them on is I get some Loctite CA glue, and I just do a little bead on this corner, just this corner here, and then I push that into place, and I just hold it there for a few seconds, and it adheres really quickly. So after that I let it dry. If there's any excess, I could just wipe it away with some Goo Gone or some acetone to clean it all off, and it comes out nice and clean. It's nice and sturdy as well, bonds really nicely. You could use anything else that you want to use. I wouldn't use E6000 because that's not really permanent, but either way you can choose. You've got your acrylic arrows as well, which they just drop into place. When you glue the arrow plate on there, it will keep those secure. So we'll just pop those back in the bag along with the arrow plate. And we've got a separate bag for the clamp card, because the clamp card is untreated. What I mean by that is the copper is bare copper, so it will tarnish over time, and so will the copper rails, they're bare copper. If you didn't want it to tarnish over time, a good tip is to use some clear varnish and just a cotton bud, like a cotton pad, and you just lightly go over it and it will keep that from tarnishing. But I think the beauty of the prop is that over time, as the copper tarnishes, it looks more like the prop. So I would leave mine to tarnish. You've got your vented pommel as well, which is just like a classic One Replicas vented pommel that we do. It comes with a accurate pommel, just a simple standard pommel there. And then finally you have your heatsink emitter cup, which if you did want to use a tri-cree, you can. I'll just open this for you, and you can see there's a threaded hole in the base of the neck, which you can use this heatsink cup and this screw to fasten it in place inside there if you wanted to. Totally optional. Personally, I use the pancake PCB holder on the inside, mainly because I just wanted to have a standard blade rather than making a special blade that slides over these heat sinks. Sort of a last minute decision, but it was easy enough to implement. You've also got your screen accurate blade plug, so that just goes in here. Now note, if you're going to be using the pancake PCB holder, you will need to trim your blade plug by about 5mm, because it's designed for the heatsink cup originally. The neck is removable as well, it's a separate piece, like so, which was obviously easier for anodizing purposes, and the emitter is a separate piece too, which just threads on there, similar again to our 2016 Hero. And we'll screw that back on. Screw that back on here. These two, like I said, these two Phillips screws hold the control box in place. Underneath this grey control box liner is a screw which holds this black box in place. Now, some people have said how the pommel works. It's removable from here, which is good for accessing the chassis. But the cool thing is that we made this in 3 pieces. So you can actually, if you unscrew this, you can actually rotate the pommel to however orientation you want. Some people like the MR look, where the D-ring is directly in line with the control box. So if you loosen this, you can rotate this so you can see the D-rings there in line with the control box. Tighten the pommel, and when that's nice and tight, every time you loosen it from here to access the chassis and put it back on, it's always dialed in at 12 o'clock. Or if you want to do some of these recent screen references, people now say that it's offset from the control box a little bit, so you can undo the pommel like so, turn that offset maybe a little bit, and tighten the pommel again. And then depending on how you want to keep it forever, you could always, because it just slides off this part, you could always glue it in place or Loctite in place however you want, because if you undo the pommel like this, it just comes off. You can have it whichever way you want. So I think most people say it's a little bit offset now, and you can put the pommel back on and that keeps it in place. So that's how the pommel cubes work for clocking the pommel cubes. So really nice. You've got M3 blade retention screw here, and yeah, it's just a real simple kit. So that's how the empty kit is. We will be offering them with as an empty kit only, a kit with an eco chassis where you get all of the electronic parts needed to install the Hilt with electronics, so Profi soundboard, chassis, speaker, kill switch, any resistors, the MPXL connectors, because I think most people will do NeoPixel. And also an eco crystal chamber kit. We're now going to be doing eco crystal chambers, which are still 3D printed FDM type style chassis, but they have a sort of crystal chamber aspect to it, and there'll be more info on that later. If Cedric sends me the renders for them, by the time I edit this video, I'll chuck in some images for you guys to see. Now here's the one that I installed right here. Nice and simple. Added my tri-ring, assembled the control box by gluing these on, glued the arrow panel on. It was a really nice and simple assembly because it's just, you know, a couple of glued bits and everything. This one has the pancake connector in it right now. I'll leave this loose for the time when I'll leave it off actually. Let's take a look at how it comes apart. So right now it's off, as you can see. It's not activated or anything. And if I want to turn it on, I just unscrew this. My kill switch is just there. So you can see the lights are shining nicely up through there. I've got my overhead light, even with the overhead light, it's nice and bright. And we'll screw the pommel back on. Yeah, mine's a little bit offset. And we'll activate.
Go away!
That's the aux button. Aux here. I've just got a static programming on the active LEDs. So we can turn that off. And the cool reveal, you just unscrew this, turn this, and there you have it. The full chassis. You can see the lights, activate it. Coffee board, auxiliary stick. Nice and simple to install. Kill switch again is just here. Turns it off. If you want to plug it back in, you can see this guide rail here. You want to line that up and you feel it in there. Turn it back. It's in there nice and secure. Turn it back on. The reason why I turn the kill switch off when I put it back in is just in case I hit the pins against something and, you know, short something.
Why are you here?
I don't want to do that. So pommel goes back on like so. And perfect tactile feedback. Nice and easy. And it just works beautifully. So it makes for such a simple install. No real technical problems or anything to overcome. You can just install it all in the chassis and that's it. You're good to go. This is what the inside of the grenade section looks like. I'm not sure if you can see, but I've just got my blade side PCB connector in the bottom of there. I'm not sure if it picks it up on camera, but it is in the bottom of there. So you know, technically I could swap these out and show you the difference. So for example, I'll just turn the kill switch off whenever I'm mixing and matching parts. So got that there. This is the non-pancake one because I did a little experiment on both. Make sure that's in place. Turn it on.
Just like the last of the Jedi religion.
And I'll show you the heatsink cup one. And we've got that one connected now. Nice and easy. So that was with the non-pancake connector, the heatsink cup connector, which are all included with the Eco chassis anyway. And again, you can just slide that out and you've got the chassis right there. So I'm going to put mine back in. You can see here you've got the PCBs and the LEDs on there. It's just a really, honestly, if you've been installing lightsabers for some time now, this is just a walk in a park in terms of an install. It won't be tricky, it won't be difficult, it'll just be nice and easy. Nothing difficult about it. And I think a lot of you will just find this install just real simple. So that's the Eco Hero, and just some tips that I can think of with regards to doing the install. When I put my blade side connectors, the holders, the PCB holders, I wired the top one and then I had the wires coming out through it. So I actually separated these two pieces. I wired up the NeoPixel connector first and I put it into the 3D printed holder, and then I ran the wires so that they were going on the face of the the PCB and then in the middle. That way they come down the middle of the neck nicely, so the wires are kind of going like that from the PCB. I used a small dab of hot glue just to keep the wires in place, and thankfully by doing so, but obviously you don't want to use too much hot glue, when you put the hot glue at the back of the PCB to keep it in place with the PCB holder, and I used the blade plug to push it down, and I just held it down there, and the glue itself kind of secures the PCB holder in place at the base of the emitter. Hot glue is good to use sometimes, as long as you're not using too much of it, because people say that if you use too much, then it's just a nightmare to service. But if you use a small amount, it's fine, because whenever I want to service it, I just get my hot air gun and I just rub hot air here, and it breaks the bond and I can just pull it out. So it makes servicing quite simple. And the thing is, if you use a good enough hot glue and not too much of it, to remove it, it's just you can just pull it with pliers and it comes straight off. And then I did the same for this side, so wires attached to the blade side PCB, hot glue into the PCB connector with a small amount, and then pushed it in. I had some 1 inch, this is 1 inch in here, so I had some 1 inch blade tube, and I used that to push it into place. And then the wires were coming out of the grenade section, and the wires were coming out of the neck, connected them up, turned it back a few times so that when I screwed it on, the wires were straight when it went back in. And that was it. I just made the connection here. So it was wire this up first, wire this up second, bring the wires out of each side, connect them up, and then screw them together. And that was how easy it was. And like I said, the residual hot glue that was on the back of the connectors that keep the wires in place and keep them secure in the connectors actually secure them inside the top of here and inside the base of here. So hopefully that makes sense what I've just said. But the good news is that you're not going to have to worry about control box wires catching or anything like that. So the kits are going live tonight. If you guys have any questions about anything that I might have missed, just go ahead and leave a comment below and I'll get back to you. But thanks again for your support. I'll put the links in the description, and I hope you guys have a nice day, and here's to more Eco Sabers. Take care guys, see you soon.